Welcome one and welcome all. I am not in my usual setup. I'm in the middle of a basement in Louisville, Kentucky, but Louisville's football team just putting it down on Duke that I saw recently. But that's something good to see. But I am joined here for the NFL Millie Roundtable for Week 8. I got Snyder, I got Drew. We got the usual crew back here right now. And Snyder, how have you been, man? We got a full slate of NFL games to talk to with no bye weeks. So I can't dilly-dally too long, but how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. Excited to dive into this big slate we got this week with no buys, which is kind of weird. I think we've got some really good spots to target this week. So I'm actually really excited to dive into this with you guys.
Yes, a massive amount of games. And Drew, glad to have you aboard for this 13-game NFL slate.
No, I was sick on the wrong week, it looks like. But yeah, happy to be back. And yeah, looking forward to talking some NFL with you guys. I know it's a big slate, so we could probably breeze through a couple games and then target the big ones, obviously.
Yeah, that seems to be the best plan. With 13 games, we'll try and get this done in just a little over an hour. But we got a lot of games to get to. And the first one, and if you want to follow along, you can go through SaberSim. If you're not a member of Run Pure Sports as well, NBA 15% off for life. Get in today. NBA just started. We had fun with college football. We're having fun with NFL tomorrow, surely. And the first game to kick us off is actually a game that we're probably going to have a little bit of interest in. It's the Houston Texans at the Carolina Panthers. The Texans have been one of the best teams as far as pace goes in the NFL. They've also been really weak and really strong with their target tree with C.J. Stroud. The Panthers have been really weak against the ground game. You get a cheap Dameon Pierce here. Snyder, this game has a couple targets that we can look at. Nico Collins, Dameon Pierce, and then something that we can get to with Adam Thielen as well as that running back situation in Carolina.
Yeah, I think this is a really good game to target. We could see some back and forth here for sure. I actually like the Houston side quite a bit here. We've got the two first-round picks going one-on-one here. It's maybe a little bit of revenge spot for C.J. Stroud, who has definitely looked much better to begin this season as he goes against Carolina, who took Bryce Young over him in the draft. But yeah, I like C.J. Stroud quite a bit here, 6.3K. I really like stacking him up with one or two of Nico Collins and Tank Dell. I think Collins is going to torch this defense this week. See some stuff on Twitter about the schemes and stuff that Carolina is running this week. I think this is a great spot for Collins to have one of those spots that we've seen a couple times this year where he puts up 30 plus, 38 and 30 in 2 games already this year. I think it's definitely one of those spots. I think he goes over 100 yards, finds the end zone. So I'm going to be have quite a bit of conviction on Collins. I think Tank Dell priced a little cheaper. If I don't think Bobby Woods is going to play, so that should really push some more usage towards Tank Dell's way. He had a couple of good games earlier this year, 20 and 28. I like the double stack. I like playing them both. I think Dell's going to be the popular cash option. So I like both of those guys. For tournaments, I do like some Jonathan Mingo a little bit as a cheapie to run it back with. 5 catches, 2 catches, 3 catches, 3 catches in his last 4 games. So he's been getting some usage there. The price tag is very cheap at 3.4K. We don't have as much good value on this slate, so that's definitely going to help. But Adam Thielen at 6.6, the price tag keeps going up, but the dude just keeps churning out results. 31, 30, 34, 20, 15, 20. I mean, he's just been an automatic almost 20 plus every time he laces them up. So it's definitely going to be, I think, pretty popular, but he's a strong option too. But I really like this game to target for both sides of the ball, mainly with the Houston side. Maybe just use the Carolina side as a couple run backs there. But I actually think Dameon Pierce, if I don't play Stroud in the passing game, I'm going to play a couple of teams with Pierce. I think you could almost just run an onslaught almost too to get really unique in the Millie Maker and such. But I think Pierce could kind of break out here in this game. He's been kind of slow to start the year, but I think this is a good spot for him. Cheap price tag, 5.3K. So I like the Texans quite a bit in this spot.
Yeah, the Texans seem to be the more popular team of the two in this one, and a large part of that has to do with the running back situation in Carolina. It looks like it's going to be a split between Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders, so if you're interested in one or the other, whether it's season-long or DFS, you're going to have your hands full now, right? Chuba looked great in relief for Miles Sanders a couple weeks ago and gets rewarded with what might be half the work in Carolina. Drew, We got obviously Robert Woods being out, like Snyder said, really brings in these wide receivers into play. And we also get a super cheap Dameon Pierce against one of the worst teams against the run here with against the Carolina Panthers. What are you doing with this one?
Yeah, I think there's more pieces from the Houston side that you can obviously stack up. Nico Collins and Tank Dell, that like Snyder mentioned, with CJ Stroud. I think obviously Adam Thielen is the run back. I mean, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. The volume is obviously there for him. He's just getting it there on PPR, and he gets in the box. Once every 2 games, he's doing pretty good. But man, his volume is just through the roof. So I think like there's one clear target guy you want to play would be Thielen from Carolina, and then you play CJ Stroud with 2 of the Houston receivers, probably Collins and Dell. You could throw in Schultz in there if you want. But I think there's just more to stack on the Houston side than the Carolina side.
Yeah, 100%. And I think when you go through it, Adam Thielen has just been someone that I feel like he's made an appearance like 3 of the 4 last times he's been he's been on the Millie Winter team. It's just been a crazy run for Adam Thielen. Finally, the price is catching up to him. But yeah, I'm with you. To me, Pierce is my number 1 guy actually in this game, just because if you're going to go with the script there, I just think it's important for a guy like Pierce to get going against this run defense, against this defense that has really struggled against the run. We also have Alex noting that, Frank Reich is giving up the play calling duties. I think it was Thomas Brown. Is that who it was who's going to take over for that offense? So that should mean better things in line for the Carolina Panthers offense here. And maybe that gets, we know the running back situation is going to be a split. But when you got like a guy like Terrace Marshall seeking out a trade and stuff, this wide receiver core is pretty cheap. And if a guy like Chark or Mingo, let's say this one does explode or does kind of have some points in it, like you may think, Snyder, those could definitely be the cheap options that you go to if you're looking for a game stack. And we got another one of 12 games left, and it's the Eagles and Commanders. So this is the next one that we're going to go to. The Commanders' defense has just been absolutely dreadful against the pass, even just dreadful in general. We also have a very awesome new sheet on the site that should be coming up very soon. It is the flow chart here. So basically, Big T was able to go ahead and tweet out a preview of what it looks like and stuff. Basically goes what player is going against each position, and is it great or not, right? Kind of ranks it from he goes the nut spot to the nut low or whatever it's called. And the nut spot, it's very close there. The Eagles are the second elite spot, I should say, with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith at wide receiver here. It seems like the wide receiver has just been crushing against the Washington Commanders. You have a banged up Jalen Hurts. And then on the Washington side of the ball, you just don't really have a sexy range of options going against this Eagles defense. And just this target tree is not condensed at all. Snyder, what are you doing with this one?
Yeah, I think this is a great spot against this defense. Although the Washington always plays them tough, it seems like they always play the Eagles tough, and it's at Washington. But I really like A.J. Brown this matchup. I think he's debatably the best play on the slate from the receiver group there, at least from a point per dollar standpoint. But I think he's like my number 1 spend up at the wide receiver position this week. I mean, he's just been absolutely on a tear. He's got a prop right around 90 yards, I believe, and it's juiced to the overs, and I think it's too low. I mean, just look at what he's been doing the last 5 weeks, ever since he made that little scene on the sidelines. He's went over 100 yards every time. He found the end zone last time. He's been a little bit due for some TD regression there, as he's only scored 2 before last week on the season. Finally got in the box last week, caught 10 for 137. I think we see a similar box score here. I think we see A.J. Brown approach that 30-point DK mark once again this week. So absolutely love the A.J. Brown. I'm kind of waiting for Smith to kind of pop off. I mean, he really hasn't done much with A.J. Brown taking over. He's had a couple drops too, and his price tag's still up there at $6,700. So maybe I try and fit in Hurts double or something if I can make that work. But pricing is kind of tough this week. So I'm just going to be mainly on A.J. Brown as my top spend up. And looking at the ownership projections, I think we're going to get A.J. Brown, under 15%, which is great, I think. So I definitely makes me like him even more there. And then looking at the running back position there, Swift, maybe he takes on more of the rushing with Hurts kind of banged up. 6'3". I've been playing Swift pretty much every slate. He's got some good upside. He had 30 in that one matchup, but he's been right around 15 to 20 pretty much the whole the whole season. So I think Swift's a good option if they kind of take it easy on Hurts and not do like the tush push and stuff as much this game. But definitely think there's a lot here. Not much for me on the Washington side. I mean, you can play Terry McLaurin. I think he's going to be the popular run back that everybody's running to. I just don't think he's got that big of upside, though. Just looking at his game logs, he's only got 1-2 games over 15. He's got one game with 20-plus points, 5,300. If he's going to be popular, I think he's a guy that I'll just get off of, and I'll just go like to a Curtis Samuel. I know he's kind of questionable, but I'd rather play Samuel for cheaper. He's been putting up basically the same stat lines, and he's 1,100 cheaper.
Yeah, it's a good point there. And we also have a question in the chat here, Drew. Is Brown the best spend up this week at wide receiver? That's from Richie Smalls. That could definitely be he might be the top guy. Drew, what do you think about A.J. Brown? And also tell me a little bit about our favorite position to talk about, the Eagles defense at 4,300 against Commanders team that has given up the most sacks in the NFL this season.
Yeah, I mean, A.J. Brown's up there. He's probably one of the best 4 or 5 guys to touch on for the most expensive. That's what I wanted to bring up really quick to Snyder's point on A.J. Brown probably being the best receiving guy to focus on in this game. But, like, it is an expensive stack. It's an expensive stack with Jalen Hurts. I think the Houston game we just talked about, you could get 2 of those receivers with Stroud for like $16K. And now you get Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown for $16K. So there's obviously a trade-off there. Both have really big ceilings, but they kind of can eat into each other a bit. So that's why I would always just say, if you want to pair Hurts with somebody, you pair him with one receiver, just because it starts to take away some of those red zone trips a little bit. But yeah, I've been playing a lot of Sam Howell. I think the last show we talked about was Sam Howell was my play of the day, dude, and he's been doing okay at 5,100, and he just kind of stays around that price. So I still want to have some Sam Howell. I'm just going to keep going back to the well. He's going to be like 2% owned. But yeah, I think obviously the pair here is Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. I won't touch the Philadelphia Eagles defense at 4,300 this week. I think I'm going to spin down a little bit, actually.
Yeah, I think that's the move, is spending down on defense. We'll get into that a little bit later on, too. And I do think it's a big deal that we bring up the Jalen Hurts situation. It doesn't seem like he's 100%. They're saying, oh, he's not going to be hindered out there or whatever. But when you just watch Jalen Hurts, it almost feels like he's lost a gear or two right now, and he's not completely healthy. When he's out in open space, he's not making men miss or anything like that. To me, that just dings his upside just a bit. And as much as I love A.J. Brown, as much as I love this spot, we have 13 games on this slate. I want to play Hurts for his rushing upside, and I don't know if he has it. Obviously, the touch push can just prove me wrong or whatever, but we're used to seeing him maybe get 30, 40 yards rushing on the ground, and maybe that knee is just a bigger issue than we think. So that would be my antidote there. A.J. Brown, to me, is one of the best spend-ups, too. I think this Washington matchup is just a dream for wide receivers, and I think that's all we need to cap up. I think DeAndre Swift, like you said, Snyder, he's been getting it done. Not only on the ground too, but he gets a lot of targets through the air. It's just he's very much the alpha in Philly in terms of that backfield. So if I do think Hurts' knee is hurting on a little bit more than they're saying, then definitely Swift makes a little bit more sense than what I initially thought. What is Swift's price tag? 6,300. That's not too bad at all. The next one here is the Jacksonville Jaguars against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Steelers and Jaguars doesn't sound like a fun game on paper because, as someone who sadly watches a little bit of Steelers ball, they just haven't done anything offensively. But if there was a spot to get it done in terms of just this passing attack, I mean, this Jaguars team has been pretty weak against the pass. And you got Kenny Pickett, you get George Pickens, you get Deontay Johnson. They're all really cheap too. So I might have a little bit of interest in the Steelers stack, Snyder. You can maybe talk me off the ledge there. And then on the Jacksonville side of the ball, you get ETN, who's just been a touchdown machine of late, and you get both wide receivers and Evan Ingram, under 6K and under 5K for Ingram there too. So we got some pieces here in this one. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I don't know if I can get the Kenny Pickett, though. I know he's got a cheap price tag under 5K, but just looking at what he's done, I mean, man, there's just no upside, I feel, with him. His best game of the year has been 18 points, and he's been living right around that 12-point mark. So if he gets you 12, I mean, that's going to put you behind the 8 ball. But I definitely like some of his options, though, receiving targets. So maybe I can get myself to some Kenny. I definitely like Pickens, though. He's got good props for 5.6K. I think it's juiced towards the over as well, too. Back-to-back games for him, over 100 yards. He's definitely a guy that Pickens likes to, or Pickett likes to look to Pickens in the end zone there as well. He's got 2 games over 25 points this year, and he scored 18 last week. So I think Pickens is a great option here. And then we saw Deontay Johnson come back last week. I think of him more as a lower, more of like a PPR type guy where he's going to get more catches. Maybe not as much upside as Pickens has, but caught 5 for 79 last week, so that's good. He's still priced at the 5K mark, so I think you can play either of those guys as one-offs or run backs or even stack up Pickett. You can run all 3 of those guys, I think, for like 15, 5K total. You get the double stack if Pickens has got some upside potentially, so I don't mind that. Is it the week we go back to Calvin Ridley is the question here. He's up below sub 6K now. The price tag has definitely plummeted after 2 bad games. He's got the upside. We know he's got the upside. He's proved it a couple times this year. Maybe I get me some Calvin Ridley this week. I don't think anyone's going to roster him. He'll probably be under 5%. 5,800 isn't bad. So I think we could see maybe a couple of scoring drives here from the both sides. I know the total is only at 41, so I don't mind it. ETN, I don't think I'll play him. I like the other guys priced around him a little better, but I think ETN would make for a good tournament play. Let me see what his ownership is going to be here quick. I've got him. Yeah, I think he's going to be quite lower owned. Definitely under 15% sure, as Pollard and Kamara and some of those other guys are going to get all the ownership there. So maybe ETN makes us a good tournament pivot there in that 7K range for the running backs.
Yeah, 100%. ETN has just been one of the best running backs for fantasy this season. And one thing to note from this game, too, is I forgot to mention, is that the Steelers have also been atrocious against the pass, too. And we saw it last week. It was Puka Nacua who was in the Millie winner last week. We all expected it to be Cooper Kupp. No, instead it was Puka. This time, you get, what is it? Christian Kirk is projecting for about 12% ownership or whatever, and Calvin Ridley's only projecting for sub 5%. Drew, is that a potential path that you go down?
Yeah, I'm way more interested in the Jacksonville side than the Pittsburgh side. I think the Pittsburgh side is still a little bit dysfunctional, in my opinion. So the key pieces for me is Kirk. Trevor Lawrence is totally fine as a QB to include in a stack. ETN, if you want to kind of limit the stacking and just kind of play a piece from the running back, play ETN with a receiver, that's totally fine. But I'm more interested in the Jacksonville side than the Pittsburgh side, even though this is like a 3-point spread or something like that, or 4-point spread. I just think Jacksonville takes care of business and Pittsburgh doesn't keep up. So Evan Ingram is fine at 4,500. But yeah, it's really, I think the biggest decision maker is like, do you want to play Kirk and Ridley together? Do you want to play them? Obviously, if you play them together, you want to play them with Trevor Lawrence, but you can pick one or the other as well. They're both about the same price. So that's really where it boils down to me is if I want to stack this, it's Kirk and Ridley with Lawrence. If I want to take pieces, it's probably slightly Kirk with ETN, and we hope to put up 28 or 32 points.
Yeah, 100%. And it's very clear to me as well, just talking about the Pittsburgh side, I'll touch on that, is that Pickens has definitely taken a step up this season. It is the number one guy there. Despite Deontay Johnson being back and stuff, I don't think we have to concern ourselves too much with Pickens' role being even slightly diminished. Pickens was the guy. He made a couple of big plays last week, also picked up a couple of dumb penalties. But you give and take what you get with Pickens and stuff. If you're the Steelers, over 100 yards last week, Deontay Johnson, 5 for 80. I do think that the stack is there. I mean, we just saw Derek Carr somehow get there despite only playing for like a half, it felt like. So I don't want to completely dismiss it, but it is the Steelers after all. And like you said, dysfunctional is the best way to put that offense. And speaking of dysfunctional, I get the Tennessee Titans and the Atlanta Falcons here. This game, in large, is probably a cross-off. I don't really see anyone who catches my interest. The highest projected player is Bijan Robinson. After only taking 1 carry last week. And Derrick Henry is the second highest. And then if you're not aware of the quarterback situation in Tennessee, Ryan Tannehill is out. That means Malik Willis or Will Levis is going to play, or they will both play. So if that doesn't sound amazing to you, I don't know what does. So this game seems like a cross-off. Snyder, are you thinking
defenses?
Yeah, defenses. Hey, defense.
Yeah, there's not really much here for me in this game like last game. Tomlin always plays really tough as an underdog. You got Vrabel here as a short home dog here as well. Vrabel's another one of those guys who coaches his team up in these situations. We've got a total here of 35 points. Just really don't see myself playing any of these guys. I don't want to play Ritter or any of his pass catchers on the road against this Titans defense. I just don't see anything here. I'm not going to play Robinson or Algier. I'm not going to play. I mean, you could maybe get. I don't mind some Tajay Spears maybe in a million maker standpoint. He put up 16, 17 points a couple games ago. Sounds like Henry's on the trading block. Hopefully, maybe coming to the Ravens here and possibly in the next week or two. So, be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. You could go to the defenses here, 2,900 and 3,100, both solid price tags there. I think both defenses are firmly in play here.
Yeah, 3,100 and 2,900 respectively. You definitely have that. Malik Willis last year, he was very, very awful during his time, but maybe he's taking the step up, and maybe Will Levis is not a terrible quarterback. We'll see. Drew, what are you doing with this one?
Yeah, it's really just defenses right now. Word is there's going to be a decent bit of rain in this game, potentially, and maybe that's why the defenses are priced down prior to the weather being known at this point in the week. So, it's really just defenses. I'd play the Falcons over Tennessee. They've actually been putting up some nice interception numbers, but both are firmly in play, and they're both cheap enough that you just include them in your pool, just trim your defensive pool down. But yeah, I think it's interesting to see how the pricing came out, and it does look like this might be a wet game throughout. So keep an eye on the weather. But yeah, there's no offensive pieces that I want to target here. There's just nothing.
Yeah, before you said that, I would have said, maybe Drake London against a pass funnel defense in terms of what the Titans do. But if it's going to be wet, if it's going to be sloppy, if it's going to be gross, then I can just pass on this one entirely. And we'll go from two teams that are completely gross to just one team that's gross, and then one team that has been the best for fantasy. That is the Patriots and the Dolphins. So Tyreek Hill was rested on Monday or Tuesday from practice or whatever. Looks like he's good to go. Raheem Mostert said he'll play at 7,700. It finally feels like these Dolphins are finally priced correctly in terms of it used to be that we'd almost have to bash two or three to even have a chance at the millie. It doesn't seem to be the case this week. And then you look at the Patriots side of the ball. You got Mac Jones at 5K. You got Bourne. You got Stevenson. It's not the best crew in the world, but you might be able to work some magic here, Snyder. What do you think?
This is an interesting game here. We got a division game. The Patriots kind of slowed these guys down when they played up in Foxborough earlier. I know the Patriots defense is more dinged up this time. They don't have their top cornerback that seemed to slow down Tyreek, who even admitted that he was one of the better coverage corners in the league that he's faced in quite a bit. 9,500 for Tyreek. I just don't see myself getting to him in this spot. I generally don't like to play some of these tougher division games. I don't think I'm trying to get the ownership here. I know Tyreek's probably going to still see probably around 20-25% ownership like usual. If he puts up 30 here at 9,500, I think you're fine. If he puts up 40, 45, you're definitely going to need him. But I think you can get by not having him this week if he only puts up 30. Just because pricing's so tight and 9,500 is a lot. I kind of like pivoting, saving the 2K and kind of going down to Jalen Waddle if I want some Dolphins exposure, because I think they're going to score 3 or 4 touchdowns in this game. And Waddle's been playing a little bit better each week, 35 yards, 51 yards, 63 yards last week. He's found the end zone a couple times. I think this is the week where maybe Waddle goes for 30 this spot and Tyreek goes for a little less than that. And I'm looking at Waddle being under 5% owned. I think he's the piece I want in this matchup for tournaments, especially. Don't see much else from the Patriots side there. I've been playing Kendrick Bourne quite a bit here as of late. He's been solid. 10 catches, 6 catches, found the end zone last week. He puts up 18, 19 points again. I think that'd be really strong for 4,700. So Bourne will definitely be in my player pool. I may run a secondary stack here with a Waddle Bourne or something like that. And I just kind of want to avoid the running backs here as well. Not sure what the snap share is going to look like. Raheem Mostert's up to 7.7 now, so that's way too high for me on this slate. So pretty much I could maybe even throw in some Jeff Wilson at 4,500 on some teams if I need some salary saving there. Maybe this is the week where they kind of ramp him up a little bit more Last week they gave him a little bit of work. Maybe this week they give him more work. As he only played 7 snaps last week. Maybe this week they play him 25 snaps or 30 snaps or something like that for a tournament. He'll be very, very low owned, if not unowned as well. So maybe some Wilson in the million maker format, and then maybe just a secondary correlation with Bourne and Waddle for me in this game.
Yeah, McDaniel did come out and say that Wilson was expected to play a little bit more than he actually did last game, and then this week it should be different, so that is definitely something there. Drew, what are your thoughts on the Dolphins here, and do you have any interest in the Patriots as well?
Yeah, it's all the Dolphins. I see a couple comments in the chat, and I'll just address really quick. So, like, the wind in Florida, I don't think is a concern. It's going to be around 15 miles per hour, gusting up to 20. I'm not too worried about that. I'm much more worried about rain in football games. And in Florida, excuse me, down there, I'm not too concerned with 10 to 15 and up to 20. And then the Mostert ownership is low because he's so expensive. So people just aren't going to be able to jam in Mostert as he was the first 4 weeks or so. But it's all just trying to see what you can fit with Miami. I think Waddle is totally fine to go back to if you don't want to pay up for Tyreek Hill. 9,500 is getting up there, obviously. But every piece of this offense is liable to go off. It's really just about getting the right combinations with the proper salary. So, paying up for like a 2-0 with a Jalen Waddle makes a ton of sense to me. I mean, 15,000 for that combo is pretty good. Obviously, Tyreek Hill can go off for 45 or 50 points. I just don't play Tyreek Hill and Waddle together. They just aren't going to go off together, in my opinion. So, yeah, it's just Tua, and it's just seeing what spits out the optimizer. If I get a lot of Hill, that's totally fine. If I get Waddle, projection-wise, he's about 6 or 7 points lower. But I mean, the ceiling they're going to be within, 10 points in the same ceiling, and you save $2,000. So, for me, it's just all Miami. No New England side, really. Kendrick Bourne looks like he'd be a fine run back at 4,700. He's pretty cheap, but outside of that, and I don't think I'm going to really play the roulette wheel with the Miami running backs either. So it's really just the offensive air game, Tua, and taking Hill and Waddle, and it's kind of just see kind of what spits out of the optimizer, unfortunately.
Yeah, it makes sense there. I think when you break it down to it, the Mostert price was just so high, 7,700. He was chalk at 5,900 and stuff. This time he's going to be, sub 10. I imagine, just looking at the slate and stuff. It's not a great spot either. I know the Miami Dolphins is almost matchup proof, but those things kind of factor in together. Ahmed played a ton last game, and you also got Jeff Wilson right there looming in the shadows. I'll be honest. I don't think I have. I understand why you would have interest in the best offense in football, but I'm not going to have any of these Dolphins stacks at all. And I say that as knowing the slate's kind of gross in terms of the quarterback stacks and stuff, but I'm going to take a stand. I mean, you just look at the ownerships here. Like Tyreek Hill is getting 20% ownership, and that at 9,500 and stuff. I just think that 1,500 for AJ Brown, saving that money, saving that cost, and maybe going to other stacks too. I just think it's going to play better, with NBA season and stuff like that too. I'm playing 150 tomorrow. So
outside of him, though, the ownership's not that bad, right?
I don't know. On a 13-game slate, like I'll go AJ Brown for the savings, and I do think they have the similar upside and stuff. But
I'm not even talking about Tyreek Hill. I'm just saying Miami from an offensive side, stacking outside of Tyreek Hill is really not that expensive, or really not that is not that owned.
Correct. I was more thinking about Tyreek and stuff. But when I go through Waddle, it depends on what you think about Waddle too. Is that last week he got hurt, came back in the fourth quarter or whatever, like missed an entire half. Yeah. You got to trust Waddle, because if it's not Waddle succeeding, and if I don't have any interest in Tyreek, I mean, just not going to hit for me either. So I mean, when I X out Tyreek and I don't have Waddle projected very high, it's just naturally not going to hit either. And I think that's just the stand I'm going to make. I mean. It is a definite stand to make, because the Dolphins' offense has been so good. But it could
be Mostert getting there, and he just barely hits value or just undervalue. But it's 30 points.
Yes,
at 7,700, and Tyreek
could be an ugly divisional game too. I mean,
it's the divisional game aspect. You got everything around it. I don't know. Some just screams off about this game to me. Maybe it's me that's the one that's off here, but. we'll move on to the New York Derby. We got a Derby game between the Jets and the Giants. This one doesn't seem as gross as the Titans and Falcons, and that's because the running back position, you get Breece Hall, who is slated for 30% ownership at sub 6K after coming off a 5-catch game last week as well, looking like a good floor. Saquon Barkley is back healthy, it looks, 8K. He looks like he's going to be a fine spend-up option. We know the upside he's got. He's going to be really low owned. As far as the receiving options go, I mean, maybe you can make the case for Garrett Wilson. Darren Waller's status is a little bit up in the air. Snyder, what do you have in mind for this one? And can I interest you in going back to the Jalen Hyatt train with us with that price tag real low?
Possibly. In like a million maker standpoint, I think we've got one of the most popular mispriced guys on the slate here in Breece Hall. He's got great props in the prop market. He's 5,900, probably should be at least 6,900. I think they're going to fully unleash him here now as well. Really like him in this spot, as many will. He's like a cash lock, I think, not really a cash lock, but near that. I expect him to put up like 20-plus points in this game. I think you're going to need him. He's going to be highly owned, but I'm just going to eat that chalk. I think that's good chalk to eat. He'll probably approach, 25, probably even 30% in some like single entries and stuff in certain contests. He could approach 30 to 35% ownership, but I'm just going to throw him in there and try and get different elsewhere. I really like Breece Hall in this matchup. From the Giants side, it all depends on the quarterback for me, and it all kind of depends on the weather as well. We're actually going to see there's a 90% chance of rain this whole game, it looks like. But the wind's not going to be up. The winds are going to be under 10 miles an hour, so that's not too bad. Then Tyrod Taylor, if he starts, I played him last week. He was fine. I could see myself playing some Tyrod in there as well. You still got Wandell at 3,700. I don't think many people, if any, are going to go back to him after last week. I'm seeing his ownership under 5%, so maybe I go back to Wandell here on the flop leg here. He only had one catch last week, but that's not bad. And then Tyrod likes to target Darren Waller, 5.2K. He's fine in this matchup. He went to him often last week, 7 for 98 and a touchdown. Put up 22 points there. So maybe I'm not going to stack this game up or anything. It'd be more like if I did, it'd be like a Waller to Tyrod or something like that. Maybe Wandell, but I'm not going to overly get aggressive with this game. Maybe a little bit here and there besides Breece Hall, though. I definitely like Breece Hall in this matchup.
Yeah, that makes sense there. And 30% owned Breece Hall is going to catch the eye of many. Drew, is he catching the eye of you? Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. No, I knew I was. I was trying to find the browser tab. I'm just like, shit, can't find it. I got too many open. But yeah, obviously he's going to stand out. Projects really well. He's very cheap. It kind of stinks though, right? It kind of smells bad. I don't know what the total is. 34, 35 points. What is that? 30? Is that right? Yeah, 35. I could see this kind of busting through and through. And this isn't really a game that I want to have a lot of exposure to. And if Breece Hall is going to be chalk in the Millie Maker, it's not something I really want to target. But yeah, he's going to be, he projects out really well. If you're just going to run it blind, he's going to be in like 30, 35% of your lineups, if not more. So I'm going to have some exposure to it, but I'm probably going to monitor not getting crazy with Breece Hall in a game projected for him then to score like 17 points. So overall, though, this isn't really much that I'm interested in. From the Tyrod Taylor standpoint, Kenny Pickett's like $400 cheaper, and you at least have the Pittsburgh side. You feel like there's some more offense, I guess, in that game from their side. But Giants defense is fine. Jets defense has actually been putting up pretty good points, so don't hate that. So this might be a defensive game as well. I'm not really worried about the weather. It just seems like a game where it's going to go back and forth, a bunch of just turnovers, just a very uneventful game. And if Breece Hall, I don't know, man. I just feel like he's not going to get in the box enough. And he's going to be 35% owned in some contests, if not higher. That might be a stay away for me, just viewing it in a vacuum. But he does project out well. He does look like a good play. Outside of that, it's really just defenses.
Yeah, 100% there. And I think this is a good point here Richie Smalls brings up again. Would you pivot to Garrett Wilson for leverage scores? If you're just talking from a pure DFS standpoint, yes, the leverage there makes sense there. You're going with the passing game over the rushing game, over the really chalk running back. Yeah, I think it makes sense. Just the one caveat there is that Zach Wilson is his quarterback. So it always makes it a little bit nervy, but we get this Garrett Wilson price tag of 6,300. I mean, at some point he's going to hit pay dirt and get 30 in one of these games. And not saying it's this week, but it's got to come soon. Maybe if Zach Wilson just hit him in the chest a few times, he can house one, but that's a tall ask for him. Jalen Hyatt and the Giants are actually committing to a wide receiver core that is actually consistent. So Jalen Hyatt played a lot last week. What was it? 2 for 75 when he was like 3K or whatever. He also had an end zone target. Obviously we saw the one a couple weeks ago where it was called back from a 43-yard catch or a 33-yard catch. I don't know. I think there's something there. It's a gross game. You don't like going against the Jets defense, but just something to keep in mind. This is a Millie show we're talking about, but this could be something down the line for next week or the week after. The Giants are really honing down on a wide receiver core, and they're really cheap right now. So we'll go ahead and digress and move on to a game that we just had a little bit of news on. It's Michael Thomas being questionable for the Saints here. They're going against the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts defense was absolutely torched last week by the Browns and was also torched the week before by the Jaguars. The only problem is Derek Carr is tough to trust for DFS. It makes these stacks look a little bit less appealing, but Alvin Kamara, the PPR god, the guy who just can't miss right now. I mean, I got to be a fool not to consider Kamara at 7,300. Obviously, he's going to be chalk. But Snyder, break down Kamara, break down this passing game, and who does it benefit if Michael Thomas misses for the Saints? And then talk about the Colts side as well.
Yeah, I think there's a big decision point in this for many people when you're looking at. I think it's going to be like a 1v1. A lot of people are going to come down to Kamara versus Pollard. I think they're both right there at the same price tag. I think that's going to be a pretty big 1v1 that people are going to choose which one to play. I think Kamara is definitely the guy I would rather play. I trust him a lot more. I really like his role here. He's got 35 catches or 35 catches, I think, or something. Yeah, 35 catches in 4 games this year. Carr is just going to love to dump it down to him. And if Michael Thomas misses, I think we could see Alvin Kamara with another 10-catch game here or something like that. He's going to see 15 to 20 carries as well. So I think he's got a great role inside of a dome here. So I definitely like Kamara a lot this week. We got to watch the news on Zach Moss as well. If he misses, I think Jonathan Taylor would be a really, really great option there at 6,200. He's been splitting carries with Zach Moss as he's came back. But if Moss is out and he gets the full workload, I think Taylor is. I think Taylor will end up being one of the more popular plays. I think that'll kind of squeeze Breece Hall a little bit since he's 6.2K. So something to kind of watch as we wait for some Schefter news and such like that leading up to lock. They'll cover that for sure on the Off the Chalk on the Morning Wood in the morning. So make sure to pay attention and tune into those. But from the Saints receiving standpoint, I would have a lot of conviction in Rashid Shaheed if Michael Thomas was out. He's 3,900. We need value on this slate. He's shown that big upside at plenty of times in the past. He's got a couple good games this year. Last week didn't do much, but 18 the week before. He put up 20 earlier this season. So I think Shaheed would be a big beneficiary there. And Chris Olave's got a fair price tag at 6.4K. 7 catches the last 2 games. It just comes down to if Carr is able to push the ball downfield or not. So that's something to kind of pay attention to as well. Josh Downs has just been torching the last couple of weeks. Him and Gardner Minshew have been on the same page, over 100 yards last week. Found the end zone again, 25 points. So I think he'd be a great option to run it back if you run like a mini stack or something like that. Definitely my favorite Colt to run back unless we get that Taylor news. I think this game could really blow up and see a lot of points in this game potentially.
Yeah, and it's a good point too. And you look at the Colts on our positional matchup sheet that Statsational does. He does a great job with it. You can get access to it with the code NBA15, 15% off your first purchase. The Colts are actually negative against the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end position. And then you also brought up a great point, too, that I forgot to mention. Zach Moss being questionable. Zach Moss is looking like he's trending more towards out. Jonathan Taylor was involved a lot in the passing game last week as well. Drew, you got two great running backs here. You also have a wide receiver position with like guys like Olave and Shaheed who could get a big boost if Michael Thomas is out. Is this a game that you're interested in? I know it's a dome, so I think I know the answer.
Of course. Yeah. No, I always play these games. Alvin Kamara obviously in a great spot. 7,300 for him. His volume continues to pick up a bit, and they're using him more effectively as well. So basically you can play Kamara with anybody else on the New Orleans side. I think Pittman from Indianapolis, I got caught on that last time, Indianapolis, is great. Jonathan Taylor I was going to bring up, so that's a perfect point. I think he's actually trending to be one of the better plays. So I'll kick it over to you here in a second, but like, I don't typically play two running backs from the same game unless it's part of like a full game stack. So that's probably like a sticking point for me. But Jonathan Taylor obviously is another great target from this game from the running back side for about $1,100 cheaper than Kamara, and will be used similarly as well. So for me, man, it's really just Kamara. I think Kamara from the New Orleans side, you could play. I think Derek Carr sucks, but obviously if Kamara is getting there, he gets it in there, in the air, in the red zone. Carr can do it. I haven't been playing a lot of Michael Thomas, man. It just doesn't seems like the ghost of Michael Thomas. And Olave is totally fine. I've been playing more Olave than Thomas. So yeah, for me, it's really Olave, Kamara, and Carr with Pittman and Jonathan Taylor. And that's really it from this game. But curious your thoughts on the same running back from the same game, or running backs from the same game. I mean, they can both get there, obviously, but it tends to be less likely if the clock is running out. The game pace is probably slower if they're using the running backs and one's getting there. It has to be negatively correlated a little bit, I guess.
So, the last Saints game, it was Etienne and Kamara who both got there in a major way. And I think there's an exception to the rule here. I think normally you're completely right. Like, I wouldn't play Damian Pierce with Miles Sanders or Chuba Hubbard, right? But you're taking guys, and if Jonathan Taylor's pass catching role does stick, I mean, they talked about with the offense coordinator, whoever the coach is in Indianapolis, saying, "Oh yeah, we want to get him out in space. It's something that we didn't initially plan on coming in, but with his speed and stuff, we want to get him out in the open." And I hate to consider Jonathan Taylor a pass catching back after one game, right? He's never been a pass catching back, just relatively if you're just strict standards and stuff. But Kamara is. And if Taylor's going to develop this role, I just think that you have either way, you're almost script proof, right? Where you're safe with the script, you're safe with the touchdown upside. I think the biggest fear for Kamara is Jamal Williams wasn't utilized at all last game, and they signed him to a big contract over the offseason, right? Not a huge contract, but enough to make you think that if they get to the goal line, string might be feeling a little bit better after 10 days rest. But I do think it's viable here. And it's just because they're more likely to be involved in the passing game than if you were stacking two running backs from the same game elsewhere.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and I think we covered it perfectly. Keep an eye on that Thomas news. We got shows in the morning. We got the morning wood. We got the off the chalk. We got the up to lock too for our members. Code NBA15, 15% off your first payment. Let's go ahead and move on to the 4 p.m. games. And the first 4 p.m. game that I'm going to get to is actually quite nice. It's the Los Angeles Rams against the Dallas Cowboys. So, Snyder, you made a mention of Tony Pollard earlier. When you look at the pricing here, Tony Pollard is $7,500. You get a nice Dak Prescott stack with $6,100 with CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson both being $7,600, $3,600. This isn't terrible to look at the Dallas side. And then when you flip it over to the Rams side of the ball, we got their usual suspects, guys like Kupp and Nakua. I know since Trayvon Diggs went down, the Dallas Cowboys defense has been a little bit worse. You got any interest in game stacking this one up, or is it mostly just Cowboys for you?
Yeah, I think there's some spots on both sides of the ball here with Pollard at 7,500. I think he could approach, 20% owned. He was a guy I was very high on preseason. I thought he was going to be – he was a first-round pick for me in the best balls. I thought he was going to be a top 5 back this year. It just hasn't came to fruition yet for whatever reasons. Hasn't scored a touchdown since week 1. I just don't know if I can – I'm going to play him probably around the field, I think, just because he's got that elite upside. I mean, he was in the pass game well last week, 6 for 80 in the passing game last week. Should probably get about 15, maybe 20 touches in this game again, I think. So he's definitely a solid option in this game. From the Rams side, you got Henderson and Freeman in there. They basically just pulled Henderson off the street and just threw him into the action last week. And just like, here you go. Here's 20 carries. He did all right. I don't know if I go back to him this week. I think I'd rather go to Puka on the Rams side. I mean, those price tags are getting up there. I don't even know if I'll be able to get to him this week because I'd rather play AJ Brown for $100 more. If that was a 1v1, it would be 100% AJ Brown, no questions asked. Maybe I get some Puka sprinkled into like a 150 or something like that. But a Cup, not going to play Cup either at 9K. I'd rather play AJ Brown for the 1K savings. It just seems like Stafford's just going to the one that's open. He's got basically two guys that are basically the same thing. Cup was a little more guarded last week. Puka was left open, so he went to Puka last week. So it's tough to decipher there. You definitely can't double stack them anymore. Let's see, from the Dallas passing standpoint, Michael Gallup, 3,400 is going to be a little bit popular, probably at least 10% owned, 3,400. The dude had more drops than catches last week, though, so that's never a good thing. Dak keeps going to him. He'll be in the pool for sure. CeeDee Lamb, 7,600, fine for tournaments if you want to go there. I do think Jake Ferguson is a great tight end option this week, 3,600. You're always looking for a cheap guy at tight end. He's shown a little bit of upside this year. I think he's definitely a guy I'll probably be overweight on in the tight end position where I'm usually not trying to spend much money. So I think he's a good point per dollar play this week. He'll probably see some ownership, maybe around 15% or so. I'm not sure. That's fine, though. I probably won't get to the defenses or anything on this game either. You could make a case for the Rams at 2,400, I guess. I mean, Dak is turnover prone. He's turned the ball over in these spots many times, but I think there's some decent pieces in this, but mainly from the Dallas side for me.
Yeah, it makes sense there. And yes, I did jump the gun, and it's not a 4 p.m. game. These next two are actually 1 p.m. But yeah, it's a good point there. Drew, what do you think about this one too?
Yeah, it's a great game environment overall. I think there's more pieces that are easier to stack from the Dallas side. They're a little bit more affordable. I'm with Snyder on Cooper Kupp, a bit expensive. Nakua is the same thing with getting up to AJ Brown for $100 more. Like it just makes a lot more sense to go that route from that game. But yeah, the Dallas side, Dak Prescott with CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson. I think those two receivers are they don't eat into each other. Jake Ferguson's cheap enough. He gets different types of targets than CeeDee Lamb does. And I think that's probably the way that I want to go. Defenses actually look pretty good from this side. I think the Rams actually at 2,400 has some viability, allows you to get up to some other pieces that are more expensive in your lineups. And like you said, the Dak Prescott is a little bit turnover prone. So that's it for me. Dallas side, I just think Dallas side. Overall, I think both teams can score. I just think the Dallas side from DFS is more affordable, makes a lot more sense from a stacking perspective.
And yeah, I agree with you guys. Snyder, I'm with you on Jake Ferguson. I just think that 3,600 is too cheap for a guy with the amount of red zone targets he's had. And obviously, I am helming the Jake Ferguson fan club. You also have to mention too. The Rams have been pretty bad against tight ends in general. And we know Dak can love to throw to his tight ends at times. So definitely loving Jake Ferguson. He might be my favorite tight end play of the slate. So 5 more games to go.
Hey, real quick. I know we got a bunch of games. You've noticed a lot more double tight ends this year, right? Or is it just me?
Yeah.
Like I've noticed a ton of double tight ends.
Last week, yeah.
Yeah. I've been getting a ton all season, I think. Like just cheap punts. And I hate it, but it fits in the expensive Miami guys. It fits in the expensive Philadelphia guys. So just interesting to talk about from a lineup construction. Just seems like it shifted a little bit this year where there's not clear spin ups in tight end, just jamming 2 cheap ones that can get to 10 points possibly.
Yeah, I know over the last few weeks it's been a little bit more relevant because there was always that trend early on in the season where no tight ends were getting double digits at all, but we had National Tight End Week last time out, and obviously it was Kelsey and Andrews in the winner, and it should have been Kelsey and Waller. You got that there too. So Let's move on to the Vikings and Green Bay Packers. Speaking of tight ends, Luke Musgrave comes into this one questionable. I think he misses. You also have TJ Hawkinson, who also had a little bit of an ankle issue, but he'll be good to go. Green Bay stripped the injury designation off Aaron Jones, but he's quote-unquote not 100% yet. Christian Watson had a scare last week. He's good to go, 5,100. This game is confusing to me because I want to really like it, but I don't love the Packers side. Jordan Love has been hit or miss at times. The Packers offense it just looked awful last week despite being in Denver. I mean, that's a big concern too if you can't succeed against the Denver Broncos defense. And then for the Vikings, Jordan Addison has stepped up in place of Justin Jefferson going down. You got Kirk Cousins at sub 7K. It's not the best game environment in the world, and it is outdoors in Green Bay. Snyder, what are you doing with this one?
Yeah, this is an interesting game. I think it's going to be kind of a slower, sluggish division game here. Total right around 41 points here, a 1-point spread. So I might just have some one-offs for this game. I'm kind of looking into maybe playing some Cam Akers. I think he's about ready to take over the role here. Madison's looked bad pretty much this whole year. Akers had a pretty good game last week. The props on him, rushing, receiving props are decent for him this week. I thought he outplayed Madison last week, only got 27 to 70 snaps. I think this week we see him kind of flip the roles there a little bit. I think he sees 40 snaps this week or so, 40 to 45 snaps. For 4,800, he's a guy I'm willing to take a stab on in some tournaments. So I'll have Akers over Madison for the price savings there. Christian Watson's a good price here, 5,100. He's got the upside. Just waiting to see it kind of unleash there. Jordan Love just has not looked good for the most part. But I will have some Watson in the pool. I'll have him in some tournaments and such. Brandon Powell is a guy I'll have for a cheap punt play, 3,200. I'll be jamming him in a little bit. He didn't do much the first half, but in the second half, he came on pretty strong there, 4 for 64 after we were staring at that bagel for a while. I think he's a good option, a good value spend down here. And then at the tight end position, I think Hawkinson's one of the best spend up options on the week. There's 3 of them up there, I guess you could argue for. I think Hawkinson's definitely in that group with Andrews and Kelsey. I think I would rank Andrews ahead of Hawkinson, though. I guess Hawkinson would probably be 3 for me, but he's definitely up there. He almost scored 20 points last week. Definitely going to see a lot of targets in this game. So if you want to spend up at tight end, I think Hawkinson at 6.2 is a pretty good value there.
Yeah, Hawkinson is definitely ticked up in targets quite a bit, showcasing a great floor as always. Drew, I know the game's outdoors in Green Bay, but there seems to be a little bit of fantasy value. I mean, Addison under 6K. I mean, could this be the lowest we see him with Jefferson gone?
Yeah, it's very possible at 5,700. But yeah, I think Hawkinson's the clear target from this game for me. We just talked about double tight end. I think there's obviously some upside to, or there's some tight ends with upside, Hawkinson being one of them. We saw that in the second week of the year when I think it was him. He taught 3 touchdowns, right? 2 or 3 touchdowns. So Hawkinson, right? In the showdown slate. Yeah. Broke the slate. Terrible. So yeah, Hawkinson at 6,200 for tight end slot. It makes a lot of sense. Not super excited about jamming in like full stacks from this game. Luke Musgrave is totally fine as a cheap one if you don't want to go to Hawkinson, or we can always do the double tight end. That's totally fine as well. And then Addison and Christian Watson as wide receiver plays from this game. But yeah, I'm not really excited to play stacks from this game. I don't think the weather's a concern. I'm not really concerned about the over-under. It just doesn't seem like these guys have like the big boom-bust type of performances that I would want in the Millie Maker. But Hawkinson does. So you're paying up for it. You're paying a premium, but he definitely has like the 25-point upside.
Yeah, 100%. That's what we're looking for here. I think Christian Watson at 5,100 is a guy that we know he has a lot of upside. It doesn't even take that many catches at all. He can have 4 catches, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns or whatever. So Christian Watson would be my guy to target just for tournament stuff. And then I don't want to touch that running back situation in Green Bay. I don't really want to go with Love here at 5,700. So Hawkinson, Watson, and then we also have the chat. DeGuara is a good shout too. 2,600 if Musgrave were to miss. So you got that there too. I don't hate Powell, but he did have a couple catches when Addison went out and Hawkinson also went out in the second half. And it did funnel to Powell there on that game, just on those drives where he had like 2 catches or whatever. So it just hesitates me a little bit. I'd rather take my chance on my scrub giants like Jalen Hyatt. Those would be the guys that I'd go to in that range. But I still totally get he's on the field a lot though. Yeah, and you also had a good point. I mean, Madison and Akers completely split the work. I think there's individual pieces here that are fine, but not stacking it up is the main thing. From one game to another, we go from the Browns. We're officially on the 4:00 games now. The Browns and the Seahawks. The Browns got torched last week by Gardner Minshew. Their defense looked human for the first time this season. Deshaun Watson went down. PJ Walker came in. They didn't really do a whole lot. I mean, Ford had a huge touchdown run to begin the game. You also had the defensive touchdown and multiple turnovers by Gardner Minshew that had the Browns in it. That offense didn't really move the ball a ton. However, Jerome Ford likely out. You get Kareem Hunt at 5,200 here. As far as Seattle goes, DK Metcalf is back in. Tyler Lockett looks to be in. So you have a fully healthy Seattle side going against a tough defense. Snyder, what are you doing with the Browns and Seahawks tonight?
And this is kind of an ugly game to me for here. We got a close spread here, a total right around 37 points. I think this is going to be kind of a sluggish battle here. I think the Browns defense is definitely going to bounce back this week. Kareem Hunt's definitely in play at 5,200. I think he's questionable as well, but he should play. I'll be off Kenneth Walker at 7K here. And then at the receivers here, shout out to Mangone and Bryce. They were in Discord last week saying, we got to swap on the Smith and Jigba and Cash, which allowed us to get up to Kelsey then as well. And if you played Smith and Jigba and Kelsey and Cash, you basically won. So shout out to those guys. They were on top of it. I firmly believe we have the best Discord in the whole industry on every sport. There's always news and updates in there. Everybody's in there all times of the day. So just a huge reason. I think that's the biggest reason to join Run Pierre is the Discord, along with the content as well. But the Discord is such a huge benefit as well. And Smith and Jigba is 4,300 this week. I think you could go back to them, whether or not Lockett and Metcalf. I think they're both questionable this week. But like we've been saying throughout the last couple of weeks, that Smith and Jigba was going to start carving out his own role in this offense. And last week, he definitely proved that he deserved some play time in this offense. So I think we see him kind of start to build on this as the season goes along. I think Lockett's getting old. I think Smith and Jigba is going to kind of take over that role as the season progresses there. So definitely still like some Smith and Jigba at 4.3K. And then I'll probably be off Lockett and Metcalf. I don't really like too much from this game. Be interesting to see what the Browns do at quarterback there as well. It looked like Watson was fine to go back in the game. The coach was like, nah, just sit on the bench. We're good.
Yeah, I mean, that offense is just gross. But the Kareem Hunt mentioned would probably be the only thing that I'm interested in on that offensive side of the ball. You also have to break it down defense-wise, too. I mean, the Browns are 3,000, 3K. That's it, stone flat. Drew, what are you doing with this one?
Before I get off mute. Man, I'm not in love with this game, to be honest. I think this is another defensive play for me. I haven't been playing a ton of the Cleveland side. Seattle, man, I was having higher hopes for Seattle this season. They've just been complete dog shit. So I'll probably have a sprinkle some Seattle stacks. I'll play some Lockett. Geno Smith is fine, but he kind of sucks at this point. But I would probably, in the Millie Maker, I would definitely stack some Seattle stuff to see what I can get at 1.5% total combined ownership, most likely. But yeah, it looks like a defensive play. Browns at 3,000 against Seattle, against Geno Smith, totally makes sense. Seattle's also 3,400 going against Cleveland, also makes sense. So this will be two defenses in my player pool, but I do want to take some shots on Seattle in the Millie Maker. I'm not super excited about Cleveland. There looks like there's more pieces that are viable just from a projection standpoint, but I'm more on the Seattle side, having a big game sooner than later, and that would be a stand I would take. It wouldn't be like a big stand, but it would be a sprinkle when, in the Millie Maker, it's just a sprinkle.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you look at it last week, Seattle started off very well, and then all of a sudden they just died in the second half, and that's just been a little bit slightly concerning if you're a guy back in Seattle now against the Cleveland Browns defense. But the upside's there. Charbonnet is back for Seattle, too. That's going to affect Kenneth Walker just a bit as well, too. I don't think we need to spend too much more time on this. We got 3 good games to cap us off. And I want to hammer down what Snyder said. If you guys aren't in our Discord, you are missing out on all the latest news, actions, everything in between, too. If you were part of the 25% that had Le'Veon Moss in your lineup, I apologize. We did our best to alert the chat today. I know Bruce, Bryce, Snyder, and Mangone, you guys were all doing a great job hammering down the news that was just thrashed into the chat. We also had Le'Veon Moss being out. We had the whole situation with multiple running backs, with Gavin Sawchuk getting the start and stuff. Didn't really. Tawee Walker was the one who ended up getting the benefit. But yes, the Discord is absolutely the best place, and not just for football, but all sports included too. So the last 3 games here. We're going to start off with the best quarterback in football with Patrick Mahomes going against the Denver Broncos. We just saw this matchup literally 2 weeks ago. That was when it was a Thursday night game. Mahomes and them didn't really crush the Broncos. The Broncos defense actually held out a fight, and the Broncos defense also held out a fight against the Green Bay Packers. Maybe that defense is getting slightly better. However, one of my favorite running back plays on the slate, and I'm sure he's going to be above 20%, and yes, that is Isaiah Pacheco, 6,100 is definitely going to catch my eye, and it's his involvement in the passing game that is doing that. And you also have Rashee Rice, who's just continuing to get more snap share, more targets, everything in between, Snyder. So talk to me about Pacheco, Rice. Yeah, obviously we have to mention Kelsey whenever we talk about it. And do you see any run backs in this one potentially?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, the 2 Chiefs that played the most, outside of some Kelsey here and there, has been Pacheco and Rashee Rice. I've told AP I love Pacheco in his new role. He's seen a lot more usage in the passing game and the rushing game. The price tag is getting a little up there, 6-1. That's still fine. I think this is a good option. We got to pay attention to the weather here too. I think it's going to be very cold in this game. It looks like wind chills right around 20 degrees. It looks like with a chance of snow. So that could maybe weigh into some stuff. I don't think the wind's going to be too bad though in this game. So that's not too bad. I think the wind's going to be right around 10 miles an hour maybe. So that's not that bad. It's definitely going to be cold, though, for sure. The total is still pretty solid there, 46 for the total there. I like both running backs. I wouldn't play these 2 probably together, but either or. I like some Javonte, too, at 5-2. I think he's finally going to start his usage is going to start ramping up his snaps and such, so I like him in some larger field tournaments. Rashee Rice, the price tag's getting up there on him, too. He's no longer, 3-7, 3-9, 4-2. As he has been as of late. It was 4-7 last week. Now he's up to 5K. Caught another touchdown, though, last week, 5 for 60. I definitely think he's a guy that Mahomes is learning to trust more and more and lean on there. So, and if I have the price, I'll definitely be putting some Kelsey in teams. Been playing him the last few weeks. The big question is Taylor Swift going to be there? It seems like he always puts up those big games when she's there. Enough of that, though. But last week, he just absolutely nuked there. 12 for 179 and a touchdown, 9 for 124, 10 for 67 and a touchdown the last 3 weeks. So if you can afford Travis Kelsey, the price tag is definitely up there, though. 8-4 is you got to swallow a lot there. Comes down to that question, A.J. Brown or Travis Kelsey. I mean, just depends on what you can do. But,
I couldn't hold it either, man.
But one of the defenses, I don't think I'll play either of these defenses. I could maybe play some Denver if I needed an absolute punt at 2K if it's going to be cold and snowy and such. But right there with you on Pacheco and Rice, so as my 2 main targets. Javonte would be my favorite Bronco.
Yeah, 100%. And yes, Stephen Coy comes in. Obviously Stephen Coy, another great member of our Discord, talking about the wins here is not a huge concern. Drew, are you going to go to Kelsey? You're going to be able to swallow a lot for him. No.
Yeah, you do have to swallow a lot, and Taylor Swift will not be there, so you'll have to take up for that. Yeah, I'll be playing some Kansas City side. I'm not too concerned with the weather. Kelsey is a lot to swallow at 8,400, but I to be honest, man, it's DFS is such a weird game, especially with football being such a prolonged sport. With obviously being staggered out, 6 days, 6 days out, 7 days out, whatever. Kelsey, I faded last week, and he goes off. Obviously, I can't go back to him this week. I'm gonna have to just keep fading until he gets a bust, and hopefully he busts this week with Taylor not there to bust as well. So that's why I will go to Rashee Rice. 5,000 for him, I still think is fine, man. I think he's his number one receiver outside of Kelsey. Pacheco's been doing great. I like Pacheco. Javonte Williams is fine, but I think Jerry Jeudy's the guy that I want to target from Denver. Actually, at 5,400, he'd be the guy that I think has a chance to break out. Most people will go to Cortland Sutton. I assume he's probably going to be a little bit higher owned, but yeah, for me, it's Jerry Jeudy. And that's really it for the run back. I just think Kansas City handles business. It is going to be cold. We'll see how Russell Wilson's whatever his current his current physical regimen is at this point. But yeah, for me, man, I do think Jerry Jeudy's the play for me from Denver, and then Kansas City, man, Pacheco, Rashee Rice, Patrick Holmes, those three is probably where I go.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And the shopping of Jeudy on the market too. We could definitely see Jeudy maybe shipped out of Denver here. When you have a losing record, maybe they try and showcase him a little bit. So I can definitely get that run back. Completely want to echo what you guys said. Kelsey, Pacheco, Rice. I don't think I can get up to Mahomes this week. But last week it worked out. It was Mahomes and Kelsey stacks that ended up winning it. So I don't hate that at all against a bad defense, or a defense that has been very bad this season. Nothing else that we really need to add. We got 2 games left. We're already over the hour mark. So let's move on to the next one here. And it's the Cincinnati Bengals coming off a bye week with a completely healthy Joe Burrow. Can't let that one go to waste. And you also got T. Higgins, who looks to be fully healed from his rib injury. So you got the Bengals coming in healthy. And then on the opposite end, you have the 49ers coming in a little bit dinged up. Obviously, McCaffrey looked okay with his oblique injury. He looked fine on Monday night. He's good to go again. Deebo Samuel remains out. Brock Purdy with concussion. Turns out he's going to be active and start to play, which I was very shocked by. He's the first player to do that this season, being activated or being able to play on the same week he got a concussion. So I think when you look at it here, the Bengals got a little bit to offer, and the San Francisco defense has been exposed just recently, just a bit. I don't see a ton of ownership. I think Higgins comes in a little bit higher under 5%. The only ownership I'm seeing on the Bengals side is just Jamar Chase, but I can definitely see myself doing some Burrow Higgins stacks here, Snyder. Do you agree? And are you going to be one of the 20% that plays McCaffrey, Ayuk, and over the 10% to play Purdy?
I always have some McCaffrey in my team just because of the floor and the upside he brings. Dude literally has 50 upside. Last week in kind of a limited role, only had 15 carries, didn't have much usage in the passing game either. Still put up 23.6 points in kind of a limited role. I think they're going to need to lean on him more in this matchup as the Bengals are coming in off that bye, like you said. It looks like Purdy's going to play, which I was pretty shocked that I thought we were actually going to get Sam Darnold at, I think his price tag was like $4K or $4,500 or something like that. So I thought we were going to get the Darnold, the ultimate value punt there, but it looks like Purdy's going to be back here. I think McCaffrey's going to be leaned on heavily here. I probably won't be overweight or too much over the weight on McCaffrey, but I always have him in some teams for sure, just because the upside he possesses. He's got the highest upside of any player on the slate besides Tyreek Hill, I think, or even right there with Tyreek Hill, as a matter of fact. So definitely a guy I look to. Chase, 8,100. I think he's a good option as well. I don't think I can get to Higgins. Maybe I can at 5,900. I mean, he's going to be really low owned, so I don't mind it there. He had that one game earlier this year. It's probably going to be some back and forth here. So, yeah, you can play some Higgins for sure. I don't think I'll play Kittle. This is close for me on Kittle, though. I like to play him in certain situations. And if we do see some back and forth here, I guess I could be talked into some Kittle, because I usually like to play Kittle in games where he's going to be needed on and relied on. And without Deebo here, I think maybe Kittle at 5.4, that's a good price tag. I'll have some Kittle on my player pool for sure, as he's going to be under 10% owned, so it won't take much to get overweight on him. So I just talked myself into playing some Kittle this week. I think this is a pretty solid game to attack, though. McCaffrey, Kittle, Ayuk, maybe some Brock if I need the salary there, and then Chase and Higgins on the other side.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm just shocked that it's a 5.5 point spread, to be quite honest with you, just with the way the 49ers have looked over the last 2 weeks, losing to the Browns, and then they lost to the Vikings last week too. Bengals coming off a bye, completely healthy. I don't know. I'm talking myself into this one, Drew. You got an interest in the Bengals side, and also what do you think about that 49ers chalk stack with Purdy, McCaffrey, and Ayuk? Those three garnering a lot of ownership.
Yeah, I struggle with chalky stacks. It would just be taking pieces of them. They are all viable. They're all. I got 6 guys from this game that I really like. Obviously, this is a good game to target overall, but got to be strategic around the stacks. And playing a 80% total stack is probably not going to be ideal in the Millie Maker. So Ayuk, McCaffrey with Purdy is fine. I think Purdy with Kittle and McCaffrey is fine. Purdy with Kittle, and Ayuk is fine. For the Cincinnati side, I see a comment there about Mixon sucks. He does, but eventually he's got to pick up the targets. He's only had like 1 to 4 in his last 5 games, I think. I think he's got to pick it up and he's got to get a TD. So eventually he's going to bust for a 20 spot. And I do like him in this spot at 5,800. So I will have some Mixon. And Chase obviously is in. You would play him in every single stack that you play with San Francisco. You would play Chase running it back at 8,100. And Chase is also a fine one-off. I think people forget he put up, 45 or 55 like 3 weeks ago. So Chase at 8,100 is a fantastic spot.
So I think the counterpoint with that is that you finally get T. Higgins back healthy from the rib injury that has held him back, to date, right? Higgins is under 6K. I don't think you have to run it back with Chase because I think you can run it back with Higgins. I know Higgins has been absolutely atrocious this year, but in the first 3 games when he was healthy, he got 28 targets. Obviously, that target share really suffered over the last couple games that he played, including missing some time there. But I think if the bye week got anyone right, it was Higgins. And that's the biggest thing that I'm looking for in this game is that you can get an under-owned guy who normally is closer to 7K than he is under 6K. So Higgins is my sneaky guy. I love what you said about Kittle, Snyder, because you also have to look at the Bengals. When we use our positional matchup sheet, on site, you can get access to it. NBA 15% off the first payment. The Bengals have been one of the worst teams against tight ends. And Kittle getting that role, looked pretty good last week. What was that, 5 for 75 performance against the Vikings? I can definitely be sold on Kittle and getting away from those chalkier options. And I love Ayuk. He's one of my favorite best ball guys and stuff like that. But if you get Kittle at like 7% compared to guys for triple ownership on the same team, it's definitely worthwhile. All right, we finally made it. We finally made it to the end of the marathon. It is the Ravens and the Arizona Cardinals. The Ravens, after absolutely nuking the slate last time out, and they did it almost all through running the ball. I mean, it was Mark Andrews who did get in the box twice, but it was Lamar Jackson who ended up getting a few rushes, Gus Edwards too. This is a great spot, and the Ravens offense finally clicking. We talked about it last week, Snyder. How many times can you get into the red zone and just kick field goals? Well, last week, they finally were able to score when they were in the red zone. So I'm looking at the Ravens here as being, yet again, another great stack, similar to what we had last week. On the Cardinal side of the ball, it's kind of meh for the most part. I don't really love anything, but tell me about the Ravens here.
Yeah, we're definitely going back to my guy. Not bad for a running back, Mr. LJ, RB1 there. He actually threw for 357 yards last week, Rubio, so it wasn't all with the running game. And I think Lamar's leading the league in QBR this year. He's completed over 70% of his passes in all but one game this year, 77.8% last week. I thought we were on to something with the Lamar Andrews stacks there early last week. I thought we were right there, and then Mahomes comes in the afternoon and just nukes the slate to kind of mitigate a little bit of what Lamar did, but definitely going back to here. I love playing Lamar in these out-of-division matchups. He plays these teams for like the first time, and he just torches them usually. You saw what he did with to the Lions last week. Now he's going to probably the worst defense in the league in the Cardinals. Big favorites here. I think that Todd Monken's system is finally starting to take shape there. I think we see Lamar put up 30, 35, potentially 40 points in this game. I think they just absolutely crush the Cardinals here. So I'm going to be right back on Lamar to Andrews, to Zay Flowers. And I got a cheap guy. I called the last week, I called the Nelson Aguilar touchdown. I said he was going to get in the box. People were crazy, thought I was crazy. He got in the box. This week, it's Odell Beckham Jr. at 3.8K. He's going to get in the box this week. The usage is getting up there. It looks like he's finally kind of healthy coming in. Caught 5 of 7 targets last week, 49 yards. I think this week he 70 yards and a touchdown for OBJ this week. So he's my favorite low-owned million maker dart throw at 3.8K. I don't think anybody's going to get there. He should probably be like 1 or 2% owned, rightfully so. But that's my guy for the million maker this week. Just checking his ownership. Yeah, he'll be like 1% owned. So probably just be me playing him. But at 3,800, if he breaks one and somehow puts up 20, I mean, you are just cooking with fire there, cooking with gas. With Zay Flowers as well, Mark Andrews. Definitely like this. think a lot of people will run it back with Marquise Brown. And a revenge spot for him there too. He just really hasn't done as much over the last couple of weeks. He's definitely live to score 15-17 like he was there for a while. 5.2K is fine. I'd run it back with him if you want. I still like Michael Wilson at 3.6. I've been playing him as a run back in my my games that I've been targeting the Cardinals the last couple of weeks. He hasn't done nothing great, but he's been fine. 3 catches the last 2 games. Cheap price tag. If he gets into the box a couple times like he did a few weeks back, definitely will pay off the price tag, though. But I definitely love the Ravens in this spot. I think they're going to nuke.
Yeah, 100%. I do want to mention a couple things. Obviously, the Marquise Brown revenge narrative is there. Doesn't like the Ravens too much. And then you also got to look at the cheap tight end front, Drew. We got Trey McBride, who is definitely the tight end number 1 in Arizona now. At under 3K, can allow a lot of things to fit. What do you think about McBride? What do you think about these Cardinals? I think we covered the Ravens side very well, but anything else you want to add, you can.
No, Ertz is out, so McBride's going to be number 1. 2,800, he's going to be near min price and going to get all the workload from the tight end perspective. And honestly, Ertz was getting a good amount of like some slots, slot runs as well. But I think the Arizona side, it would just be the cheap plays for me. Rondell Moore at 3,400, I would take a shot on. McBride, like we talked about, is super cheap. So obviously is a nice filler in the tight end spot, or you could, again, jam double tight end with another tight end. One of those could be Mark Andrews at 6,400. I do like Mark Andrews here. We just talked about Hawkinson from a couple games ago. Andrews is up there. He's like the junior Travis Kelce as far as always getting the red zone work from Lamar Jackson. And I think like the first show of the year, we talked about like Lamar Jackson. I just don't like pairing him with people because he starts to like leech off of their points. Snyder mentioned he threw for like 357 last week, which is fantastic to hear. But I would just pair Jackson with one guy. It would probably be Andrews. Zay Flowers is also looking like he projects pretty well. I think that's fine. But the game looks great. I think Baltimore handles business. But last game of the slate, man, I would probably just have limited exposure to this game overall. It would be cheap pieces from Arizona, and it would be key pieces around Lamar Jackson from Baltimore, namely Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers. So that's it for me, man. It's actually a game I'm not super excited about from a DFS perspective.
Yeah, 100%. I didn't even realize that Zach Ertz is on the IR. So up the Trey McBride value stacks. That's going to be
He'll probably be like 30-40% owned.
13 game slate. I don't know. I just think people just don't really want to play spin down tight end who hasn't done much at all. And let's take a look at the expected ownership. So yeah, you're right. Hopefully more toward 20 than it is 30. 27 right now. Check to that fuck. Yeah, I think this is it's been a good show. 13 games. It's been a long one, but I cannot let the people leave without getting your plays of the day. And we know the rules. Under 20% for it to be eligible. Snyder, I'll lead it off with you. Who is your play of the day for week 8?
I'm going to go – I've been talking about this guy quite a bit. I'm going to go A.J. Brown. I think he'll be under 15% or right around 15% this week. I think he's going to be the best point per dollar receiver on the market. But my long shot, well, I'll just throw Odell in there again. I think he's going to get inside the box as well at 3.8K.
I love it. Drew, who is your play of the slate?
CeeDee Lamb, 7,600. He should be under 10% as well. I like the Dallas side, and Lamb's obviously a big part of that.
You know what sucks is that I expected you guys to take a little bit longer so I could dig in a little bit, see who my play of the day would be. But no, you guys got to go so fast. My play of the day, it's gross. Let's see what his ownership is. I don't want to break my own rules. Yeah, we got it. Dameon Pierce, 1%. Yeah, I'm actually shocked it's that low. Dameon Pierce gets into the box twice tomorrow, 5,300. Take it to the bank. And thank you guys for joining us. Remember, code NBA15, 15% off your first payment here at Run for Your Sports. Get in. We got all the sports offered, everything from top to bottom. Thank you all for joining us. From Snyder, from Drew, from me. Have a great rest of your day. And if we don't win the Millie, we hope it's you.